Brown, and I am the co-founder of the Women Writing Intentionally Collective. Today, I am here with the gorgeous Kelly Schwartz-Kevill, who is a writing mentor and publisher as well. And we're going to talk about writing to heal and transform. So the power of transformation that comes from writing and sharing your story. So Kelly, I would love for you to just quickly introduce yourself and let everybody know a little bit about you, and then we will dive straight in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It is such a pleasure. I love doing any kind of collaborative work. The power, as we were just discussing, the power of community, the power of collaboration, especially among women, is just, I always say it's life-giving. And, my 21-year-old daughter rolls her eyes at me like, all right, Mom. But I'm like, you will get it. If you don't get it yet, you will get it. I work as a writing mentor and publisher. I also do some podcasting, which I'm just about to relaunch that. But my real focus right now is encouraging women to really step into their stories. I like to say step into their power and potential every day by allowing themselves to write with abandon. It's the most beautiful place to start. There are plenty of people out there like ourselves who can edit your book and help you, get it formatted and all of that and tidy it up. But to actually get the content on the page, to actually let, as we say in this space so often, let the knowing download, right, come through you onto the page, like just that experience with writing community or in my writing communities or a writing intensive, just of holding and nurturing and being a part of a community of women who are writing their stories, telling their stories, is just so very, very important to me right now in my life. And it's something that I've kind of reconnected to in the last few years. So I just feel very excited about it. That's like the big word in my vocabulary these days. I'm so excited.
Yes. Oh, I completely resonate with that. And I think it's one of those things that as women of a certain age, we have, I guess, awakened to the importance of, I guess, finding community, because that's a big one that when the women who have come into our Wounded Women series and into our Jenny's and My Book containers have said, and I'm sure that your authors say the same thing, one of the biggest takeaways for them is the power of community, of coming together with a group of women where they feel like they're coming into a safe space where they can be vulnerable, where they can dive into their stories, dive into events that have happened in their past or experiences or things like that, and really examine them, dive deep into them, look at them from a different perspective. Re-examine them from, instead of coming from a place of pain or trauma or sadness or just those uncomfortable feelings, and actually having an opportunity to re-examine them and look at them from that distance, the beauty of time coming in and giving us that opportunity to say, okay, well, let's get curious about this. What was the societal impact and influence that happened surrounding those events? What was I responsible for? What actually happened? And really looking at it and saying, well, is this, like, am I the victim in this? Am I the villain in this? Am I the hero in this story? And how can I shift that to find those nuggets of gold? How can I find the wisdom in that? How can I find the lessons and the learning in that? And how can I find those messages of hope that somebody else who has been through what I went through or is going through something similar at the moment, that maybe is that piece of wisdom that they need to hear, because they are still sitting in that darkness and don't know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and they need to see that somebody else has already walked that path and come out the other side.
Absolutely. That whole, this isn't my phrasing. I've taken it from another place, but the whole idea of experience, strength, and hope, I reference that all the time because, there is something to be said for recounting something that maybe was painful, challenging, hurtful, dark, right? But also tagging onto that the strength and the hope that comes from living through these experiences. And you kind of referenced it there at the end, like there's nothing more comforting than hearing someone speak your truth when you're feeling alone and you're feeling isolated. And, intellectually, you may know, everyone says there's other people out there, I'm not alone. But when you actually hear a phrase or you see an expression on someone's face or it's illustrated in a piece of writing, it's just so comforting. And it immediately kind of frees you. And there's like this relief that comes with it. And being a part of a community is key to that. I mean, you can share in someone's writing by reading it and being the audience, and that's one way to receive it. And then, also in these book collaborations, it's so beautiful to make the connections. And because we met in one of these kinds of collaborations, that people come in with different expectations and different goals, but in the end, you're part of a community, whether you like it or not. Like I've heard people say, well, I just want to write, I don't want to be like involved in other stuff, which is usually connecting, meeting online, sharing work, but you're nonetheless a part of it, and it's there for you. It's a resource for you. And I know my own experience and the women in my inner circle and my broader circle of writers is everyone speaks to this on some level, that there's just this, I like to call it soft place to land, that allows you to explore the stories.
Yeah.
And I just want to say how our pets are really getting in on this live today. I hear my pet talking now in the other room. They're like, we have a story to tell.
Yes,
Can we
absolutely.
get it on it? But where was I going with that? The barking distracted me. I was saying that I think it's just so valuable, and so it's such a good place to like build your own confidence and self-worth and self-acceptance, because when you share your story, it's like this great act of vulnerability. And then you have this community around you to continue to hold you. And it just allows you to really, again, step into that power and potential. You're like, whoa, I was vulnerable and I survived. And in fact, look at all this beautifulness that comes from being open and vulnerable and authentic and genuine, and all
I
of the things.
That is actually one of the things that people overlook when they come into the book containers. Like when we came together, when we met, you mentioned a moment ago that you and I met during Aligned to Leaders. And in fact, that's actually where you, Jenny, and I all met, was way back in 2021 when we wrote our stories in Aligned to Leaders, stories of women who shed this, the weight of societal expectation to fulfill their soul's mission. And this is something that we came into this experience all as strangers, not knowing each other, not having any clue what any of us did. And it was the power of collaboration in that container. I know you and I talked about doing Clubhouse rooms back when Clubhouse was super popular. And, I collaborated with a bunch of the authors in those containers. And in fact, you and I have then gone on to write other books with other publishing houses, and then creating our own collaborative containers where we have then collaborated with authors in those spaces as well. I've done Facebook Lives with other women that I've co-authored books with in other collaborative book programs. So the power of those connections, the power of meeting and getting to know your co-authors isn't a reason why people go into a project, but it is one of those bonuses that comes with it, because because it's a multi-layered experience, right? You go in thinking, oh, I know exactly what story I'm going to share. Sometimes when you see the title of a book and you see the cover of a book and you're like, oh my God, yes, I love it. That is exactly that is the book that I need to write in. And I don't know if that's how you felt about Aligned to Leaders, but when I saw the cover and the title, I was like, that's the one, because I turned down other multi-author book opportunities before Aligned to Leaders. But when I saw that cover and I saw that subtitle, I was like, this is the one. This is the one that I need to write in. This is where my story needs to be told. And we go into it thinking, well, I have a story to share. And we're not really going into it to think about who we're meeting and what their stories and things like that are. But as we get to know each other and as we start to dig into our stories and those layers of vulnerability start coming up, because depending on the story that you're telling, and I know in Betrayed, and I'm sure in Conversations Between Women, which was your book that recently came out, the kinds of stories that women are sharing in those books really asked us to dig deep. And particularly the women in Betrayed, the feedback I've been getting from the authors and the feedback that Jenny and I both also had to share with our authors was there was a lot of resistance that came up to sharing these stories because they were stories of betrayal, and they were stories of how we had either perpetrated betrayal against another woman or self-betrayal against ourselves, or we had been betrayed by other women or by societal expectations of women. That going back and diving into some of those stories and memories was actually quite traumatic in a way, because it was asking us to go back and really dive deep into stories, those feelings of betrayal, like really hurt, like they broke our hearts. They shattered pieces of ourselves. And we were being asked to go back and re-examine those things, to tell those stories, and then to find the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And so I know, like, I shed a lot of tears writing my chapter. Like, I cried a lot. And I know that some of the other authors also had those feelings of, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can share my chapter. I'm going to pull it or whatever. But again, that power of community was some of our authors were willing to share with each other and said, would somebody look over my chapter before I submit it? Would somebody, this is because we were running writers' circles. We run writers' circles for our authors. And so during the writers' circles, people would talk about, this is what's coming up for me. This is what I'm struggling with. And then we would have this incredibly healing experience where all of the other authors would come together and provide that support and love and be like, oh, I'm feeling the same way, or I was struggling with the same thing, or I've been through a similar experience. I will reach out to you after the call or whatnot. And so our authors were connecting with each other outside of the container, providing that love and support, stepping up to support each other and allowing themselves to be supported within the container, even before the book went out into the world. And
oh my God.
It's
so true.
That, like you say, it's not just that power of community, but it's also that soft place to land, that being able to be safe as we tell the stories, as we allow ourselves to heal, because it's a little bit like pulling a splinter or a thorn, right? Like that's been festering underneath the skin, right? And sometimes you feel like the skin has healed over and you didn't even know it was still there. But it's just there. It's under the surface. And as you're trying to, to dig it out, it hurts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I agree.
Allowing it to finally be released properly. And I mean, I'm certainly not saying that there is no room also in this process for professional therapy and help and support as well, because that can be a really important part of sharing these stories and going back, is having the support of your team. It's not just being in the containers themselves, it's also knowing where to go for support as well within your actual community. But it's the freedom in releasing that and and I keep hearing, and I'm sure I would love to hear your perspective on this as well. But, even over this weekend, one of my authors posted in our author chat saying, I was scared to share my story. There were things I hadn't told my kids, and it opened up a discussion to have with them. And one of my kids shared an experience that had happened to them that they had been carrying, and it has allowed them to start healing as well. And that ability for us to actually start breaking those shame cycles and the silence is actually, like, there is so much magic in there when we share our stories and open up the conversation, even for our children to share their stories with us, for our friends, for our family, for people we don't know, or clients, community, to say, oh my God, Kelly, I didn't know that about you.
Yes.
But actually I had something similar happen. And,
So
I'm sure that some of your authors have said similar things about their experiences as well.
Oh, absolutely. And as you're speaking, I'm just thinking about all the instances, where an author comes and says, well, I really want to share this, but I am worried about what my children are going to think, or I'm worried about backlash from a person in my life. And we talk about all the ways to deal with that, and I think that's a big piece, again, of this community supporting you and helping you to make decisions around that. But I think that what you illustrated just now with the author in your book about opening up a discussion, whether it be with your children or someone else, as long as we're being truthful, and our motivation in telling our truth is to tell our story as we experienced it. Because, most of the work I'm doing right now is working with authors who are doing some type of memoir, autobiographical essays, or chapters, or full-on books. It's a really different animal than when you're writing fiction. So there's this whole element of real world and real world consequences that people think about. But what I haven't met anyone that's had a fallout from it. That is not, no one that's like, oh my God, this is terrible, I'm so sorry I did this. Everyone is like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this. Oh my God. It's just built my confidence. It's helped me level up. And I feel like I'm in service, to others, because I am a part of not only the community of authors, but this community of readers and people that are experiencing the work.
I think that's a really good point to dive into, though, and I really just want to touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That so many people come into the container and they're afraid of what people will think about their story. They're afraid that when it goes out into the world, people are going to judge them negatively for sharing their story, and that they will be ostracized, that they will be judged, criticized. And again, this is very much what the Wounded Women series is about, is like facing those systems and the fear of judgment. Yes. But that is what people come in struggling with, is that fear of, what will people think of me when they find out this part of my story. And then, as you said, not one author that I have ever written with or published has ever come back and said to me, you have to pull my chapter. I'm so sorry. I should never have written that. It was a mistake.
Right.
Because the outpouring of support, like you said, that comes through when people do say, oh my goodness, I never knew that about you, or oh, I've had a similar experience, that every single time, and I mean, touch wood, that but it has never once happened that I have ever experienced anybody say that was a mistake, because it is that fear that holds us back, the fear of being criticized, and yet that almost never is actually how it plays out.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, there are so many benefits, and there's so much goodness. I mean, this is the other word I use all the time, so much goodness, because I just feel like there is so much goodness around this experience from every angle you look at it. And I know, just to connect back to some of the things you were saying earlier, like one of the things I've watched when we're working together, one of the pieces I do is the writing mentorship and the writing intensives. And so, when we're working through creating first drafts and second drafts and all that goodness, I love to watch the authors who might not consider themselves authors or writers, right? They're telling stories. Everyone has a story to tell, but they may not wear that writer hat. I love to watch them level up. And whenever I talk about this, I go like this, because they're leveling up, but they're going deeper. Right. So they might start out, I want to write about this experience. But that's one of the beauties about writing with abandon, is that when you start writing, the first thing you write about may or may not be what you really want to write about. It's just kind of your leaping off, your jumping in point. And then if you allow yourself to kind of work through that, then you discover the deeper story. And that's where the real healing starts to kick in, because you're like, oh, okay. And when you're doing that in a container, in a community, again, there's safety in that, because, nobody is wanting to take risks if they feel unsafe already. So like creating a safe container, creating a stable, secure community allows people to take those risks, allows them to go just another step further, like another step deeper. And again, you as the writer, as the storyteller, get so much from that. And the person receiving it gets so much more. Like I always say, like if you're crying when you're writing, somebody else is going to be crying when they're reading, because that's authenticity. That is the truth. And, when I talk to writers, that's what I say. Like, there's nothing else you need to do but tell your truth. Right? Just be true. And that is going to, all the rest of it, your skills you can develop, and, people that can support you. But ultimately, just telling the truth is so, so, so vital to telling a good story.
Yeah.
And
I love what you're saying then. Like, not everybody who comes and joins a book project considers themselves a writer or an author, especially not an author. I mean, stepping into your author identity is like a whole different thing, right? But storytelling and becoming a writer is something that it isn't even about being a writer. As you said, it's about being a storyteller. It is about allowing your story to be told. It is, like you said, about speaking your truth, because the truth is that your draft is going to go through multiple edits.
Right.
And when you work with a publisher like you, or like the Women Writing Intentionally Collective, like our mission is to produce really impactful books that have a story to share. We feel, like bad books hurt our soul, right? And for us, that process, we are so incredibly proud of our our chief editor, Ruth. She is amazing, and she does developmental editing. So she works with our writers. She also offers book coaching, services as well. And quite a few of our authors have then worked one-on-one with Ruth to help them craft their story, or help them word it in such a way that helps their story to shine, that just polishes it up into a diamond, so that they are presenting the best possible version of their stories. Instead of, and I'm sure you and I have both been in book containers where editing perhaps is more like just sticking it through Grammarly and it's not really as simple as that when you actually are committed to showcasing people's stories.
I love that word, showcase. Yes.
Producing a book that really has impact, you can still maintain the author's authentic voice while editing it properly.
Yes, I love that you said showcase, and I love that you said polish it up, because that is also a really beautiful experience from within the container. When someone has really allowed themselves to write with abandon, who has allowed themselves to be a truth teller, who has shared their story, and then has the benefit of someone within the container who has been allocated to come in and polish it up, as you say. I love that. And then when they read their words, like, oh my God, like, there's such pride in that. It's kind of like when you go to a photographer and they take a really good picture of you, you're like, wow, I look really great.
Yeah, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I looked like that.
No idea. I was so gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the angles.
But it's similar in that piece of it as you're explaining it. And I think that brings comfort, again, a relief to someone that wants to tell their story, but it's like, well, I'm not a writer. Or the other thing I always hear is, well, does my story really matter? Is it really that important? It's important to me, but why would it be important for someone else? But the fact that they're talking to us means they want to tell their story. And I always say to people, if you want to share your story, I can guarantee there is someone out there that wants to hear it, that there's someone that needs to hear it. There's something to be said for that pull to share. The other thing I also like to say, and I'm looking at the clock, I know we've got to wrap, but I have begun speaking of storytelling as the language of women, because I feel like it's so obvious to me that that's how we build connection. And in small little micro situations where it's just two people, all the way up to, big collaborations, where it's like, I share a story with you, you share one with me, and we have this back and forth. And this is how we build the foundation of our relationships. And I always say that you can really feel when that's not working. That's when it's like so obvious how important it is. When you like share a story and it just kind of falls flat in front of you and you're like, oh, okay, we're not doing that here. We're not building relationship here. And the mess and the way that's communicated is that, and the motivation for not sharing back and forth can be, many reasons. It could just be that someone doesn't have the space for it right now, but it's a clear message. We're not building connection right now. We're not storytelling, right? That is a huge piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really just want to point out here that the magic in storytelling is actually in allowing yourself to dive deeper, like you said, to really dig in, to have the right support there to help you polish your story and help you bring out, because we can all dive deeper. And that is one of the things about working with a writing mentor, working with a book coach, working with a publisher who really cares about your story, is actually asking those questions like, where could you go a little bit deeper here? Could you explain that a little more? Don't just take the safe road. Don't just skim
right.
over the parts that are actually where the magic is, because they're a little bit sensitive. But like, how could you really like dive in that little bit deeper and really find the magic in your story? And
I just love that. And I want to share real quick. They're one of the women in Conversations Between Women, that Stories That Heal Us. She came into the book and wanted to tell the story, but wanted it to be an uplifting story. So she kept kind of moving away from the painful parts, the challenging parts, the real meat of what brought the other pieces to her. And what happened was she created this most amazingly raw, powerful piece. And once she allowed herself to like really go there and to do it in a way that, really accentuated both sides of the story. You know what I mean? The pain is something that you can grab onto, but you don't have to stay there. She really was able to highlight that journey from there. And it's just beautiful to watch. I mean, I personally love, that's one of the things I love the most about this, is to watch women, especially, I work predominantly with women right now, but to watch people step into their story.
So this is Conversations Between Women, the Stories That Heal Us, published by Kelly Schwartz Kevill. And it is available on Amazon. The link, if you would like to pick it up, is just there in the ticker. You can grab it at Linktree/Kelly Schwartz Kevill. And you can grab it at the moment, I believe, for 99 cents on Kindle. So if you would like to hear a little bit more about the stories from the women who have shared their journeys, you can grab it just there. We also, if you would like to find out more about Betrayed and read the stories of women who have transformed their broken hearts into opportunities for abundance and purpose. You can also pick that up on Amazon for 99 cents at the moment. Both of those books were bestsellers on Amazon and were able to be out there. I know that the paperback of Conversations Between Women has recently come out, and the trade will be coming out very shortly.
Yes. Actually, this week we're doing the official paperback launch, which, technically it launched last week. So I just happen to have one right here. That feeling of when you get them in the box is so exciting. And I'm actually getting ready to do an interview with one of our authors in just a couple minutes. So we're doing that all this week. So that's always an exciting piece also to be a part of, to witness, and to encourage people to jump into this. Seeing your name in a book, like seeing your story printed on the pages that you can hold in your hand. It's just such a beautiful thing.
There is nothing like actually holding your book in your hands, like the magic and the wisdom and the excitement of actually finally holding. I mean, having the ebook come out is amazing. Right. And I know for all of the Betrayed authors, that has been super exciting. But when I published my first book as a publisher, Lunar Wisdom, last November, actually releasing the paperback and being able to hold Lunar Wisdom in our hands was just absolutely next level. And I know Jenny felt the exact same way when she did Quiet and Badass last year, because that was the other thing that we were touching on earlier just before we went live, was not only did Kelly and Jenny and I meet in the Aligned Leaders book container where we were sharing our stories. And I believe that was your first book as well, wasn't it,
Yeah,
Kelly?
That was my first book, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was Kelly's first book, it was Jenny's first book, and it was my first book. So we were all first-time published authors together in a collaborative book container. But then all three of us actually ended up stepping up to create our very first book project. So Kelly's was Conversations Between Women. Mine was Lunar Wisdom, Reconnecting with the Divine Feminine through Rituals, Spells, Magic, and the Phases of the Moon. And Jenny's was Quiet and Badass. I think it was Visionary Women Making an Epic Impact or something along those lines.
Yes.
So yes, all of our books are available in the UK. They're available in Australia. They're available in the US, in Canada, anywhere on Amazon. You can purchase them on Kindle. So if you follow the links that we shared earlier, you should be able to click through and find it in your local Amazon store. If you are looking for the books and you're having trouble just typing in, if you haven't clicked the links that we shared or use the links that we've shared, if you go onto Amazon and type in Conversations Between Women and then make sure that you are looking in the Kindle store, it will come up first. And the same thing with Betrayed. And if you type in Betrayed Stories from Women as part of the subtitle and make sure that you're in the Kindle store, it will come up as the top search result. So they should be available globally. They're currently available for 99 cents or the equivalent. Just to put those up again, Conversations Between Women is available at Linktree/Kelly Schwartz Kevill. So that's just on the ticker at the bottom of the screen here. And if you want to pick up a copy of Betrayed, you can pick it up at mybook.to/betrayed book. And the capital B's are very important in that because
there you go.
Yeah. So
well, Tracy, I am so appreciative for being here with you. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again and maybe doing some other collaborations, since we're doing such similar kinds of work in the world. I have to run because I'm about to interview my other author, and I just realized what time it is.
exciting.
So
Well,
I don't want to leave her hanging, but I so very much appreciate the invitation to be here with you today.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
I'm so excited to have spoken with you. And just to let everybody know, Kelly is actually currently about to produce her second book, Another Conversation Between Women. So if
Yes.
you click through to the link tree that I just shared a little while ago, I believe she does have an express your interest form on there if you would like to find out more about participating in Another Conversation Between Women. And
Thank
if
you
you
for
would like
highlighting
to find out more about writing in the Wounded Women series, you can find it at womenwritingintentionally.com. We are still accepting applications for Broken, which is all about breaking generational cycles and ancestral chains to create a brighter future for ourselves and our families. And then Burned, which is all about stepping up to speak your truth and share your wisdom without fear. So if you would like to contact either Kelly or myself and find out more about our book collaborative containers, keeping in mind that if those particular titles don't resonate for you, we do have other titles waiting in the wings that maybe we haven't announced yet. So if you would like to find out more about sharing your story, don't be afraid to step up and contact us, and we will let you know what we have that might actually be a perfect fit for you.
Yes. So much goodness.
Thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much.
much for being here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I look forward to chatting again, Kelly.
Absolutely. Thanks.
No worries. Well, goodbye, everybody. And we will catch you again really soon.
Yes.